Um, Let me give my thanks to the Ethnic Studies Library, to Sina and her crew, to Harvey and Eastwood Books, and to the unceded Ohlone territory that makes it possible for us to gather today. Super honored that Bianca asked me to open up this night in celebration of her brilliance in this really critical, gorgeous, important text, Unassimilable, with some poetry. Is that okay with you? The first time I encountered Bianca and her work was at the height of the pandemic in 2020 when we were all sheltering in place. It was also the same time I encountered Michelle's work too. It was in that moment of unrelenting violence towards Asian American folks in the Bay, to New York, to Atlanta and beyond. And in the way this government and their Western allies and media were framing the pandemic as being the fault of Asian folks. And it was just one of the most vicious times I've seen across our AAPI community. And at times when times like that happen where shit is really going down, I tend to look towards what the poets are saying, what the artists are saying, what the writers are thinking. And Bianca was just one of those artists. It was first through her comics and through how she was contextualizing such unimaginable violence through her beautiful art and the way she was languaging those moments that transcended beyond just the pain and the trauma that community was enduring, but also the hope and possibility of cross collaboration and solidarity, that there was actually a lot of folks who were standing with Asian folks to say, no, this is not how you're going to treat us. This is not how this goes down, right? And so from there, I've been a deep admirer of Bianca and always just like waiting to see what she has to say, what she has to think, what she's creating. And so when it came about that she was publishing this book, it excited me to imagine, what does the Asian American Manifesto for the 21st century look like? How many folks have read the book first? You can make some noise. Yeah, okay, cool. I don't want to like spoil anything, but I think she's quite generous with something that artists tend to do, in which they offer a vision forward. They offer a possibility, or even just an open door that you can go through if you want, see how you feel about it. You could come back in if you don't like it and try another way, but she's offering a reconsideration of where Asian Americans can go moving forward in ways that inspire even my own reckonings with my own Pacifica people. And so I'll start there. I want to share just 2 poems before we hand over the rest of the night to Michelle and Bianca. But before that, I just want to make some noise, either through snaps or cheers, if you've ever heard poetry or spoken word poetry out loud. Okay. You're from the Bay, so you should have been. So you know that you don't have to like clap in your heart, you don't have to golf clap or anything. If you feel or hear or resonate with anything that's being said tonight, be it through me, Michelle, Bianca, or any conversations you're having, you can do a lot of things. So you can do some of them with me right now. You can snap your fingers if you're resonating with anything you hear tonight. You can pretend like you're taking a big bite out of something yummy and you can go, mmm. You can be vocal and you can talk back to me. You can say, okay, poet.
Okay, poet.
Go in, poet.
Go in, poet.
Buck it up, poet.
Buck it up, poet.
If you like what you hear. If you don't like what you hear, you can talk about it after. See, I'm sensitive. Part of what I'm reckoning with for myself as someone who's been organizing the API community for more than half my life, who's been an artist for nearly 20 years, I am at a point in which we as artists, as folks who are loud and who have a platform or whatever you want to say about those of us who do language and speak truth to power, we can do that all we want, but we're also at a point in which we need to show people what we mean by what we're saying. We actually have to model what it looks like to get to an alternative world in this one. We actually have to show them the steps. Bianca shows us hella steps in her book. Okay. Yeah. And I'm offering you one here in this first poem. This first poem is called New World Order. This is what could be a possibility of the kind of world we could make it to, that goes on in my mind when I think about the world we deserve. I'm always in the new world when I'm writing, waiting for all of you to come here with me. That life that queer, trans, Black, brown, Indigenous people weren't made to survive through. Yeah, when I write, that life is over, y'all. Not like we died, More like when I write, we live forever. Every moment at the tip of my tongue in the new world is the new world because I said so. I breathe easy because that's what I said I would do, so I did it. I'm much more brave here on the page, doing things I thought I could never do because I wrote it possible. Here, I kiss my crush and think I might as well kiss all my crushes. I mean, what do I have to lose here? What will come for me that didn't already come for me in the world I left? I stopped paying for my silence here. Couldn't afford it in the first place. Was never the inheritance my ancestors left me with anyways. Here, I might as well do all the things the old world said I couldn't do. I might as well sock a white supremacist in their face. Yeah. I might as well collect every unnecessary apology I made to white women, wring their tears out of all my clothes. When I write, I melt away the prison bars. No detention centers are lined at the border filled with our sins. Here, there are no borders. I have imagined this place beyond the nation. Here, there is no police force, military, or boot camps to train at anymore. The guns and artillery tanks have been collected, melted down, and turned into playground structures for every school we pulled the bullets out of. Here, we return the undead children back to their parents, starting with Black and brown mothers. Here, every Indigenous woman and girl are counted for, and none can go missing. Here, we burn the citizen documents, and the ashes are scattered across the altar of a world that never deserved our migration. My pen game is actually not a game, y'all. It is a machete. It is my favorite thing I inherited from my ancestors. They cut their teeth on the edges of my torn island nation as our colonizers killed them and US territoried our land. But when I write, Samoa is one country again. I re-kill my colonizers for the hell of it. I unbury my people out of principle, out of indigenous duty. Here, you run us all of our islands back. In Oceania, the Caribbean, and all island nations belong to themselves once and for all. Tourism died, and the New World doesn't need to discover shit. Indigenous knowledge keeps everyone, Indigenous or not, fed, sheltered, respecting our elders, and only risking things for our collective joy. My people knew I would make it to this world the moment I wrote my first poem. The moment I understood what my voice was made for, the moment that saw me unafraid of this ancestral training that is called my life, they knew I was on my way to this moment, saw me fit for freedom, and here I am, supplementing a PhD destiny for the whisper that never died, the one that told me I am smarter than college could ever make me, and I have something that I can only give to this moment as an artist than anything I thought I was supposed to be. I made light out of this speechless terror. And now we can see what the darkness did not want us to see. I am waiting for you all here in the new world, y'all. There is a lot less here because there is only what we needed, and all we needed was each other more than we needed a president. All we're called to do here is to protect each other more than we need the police. I have dreamt of this world for so long that sometimes I forget to look back to grab each of your hands and bring you here with me. But then I remember you have to want to come here for yourself. I will keep trying to bring you, but you have to believe in your arrival. You have to commit to the promise of our collective freedom more than you commit to capitalism. You have to know that your audacity to dream of a world better than the one you're barely breathing in isn't the one you're supposed to breathe in. You have to want to come here yourself, fam. You have to say out loud with your chest, with every muscle in your mouth, that the old world is over and that the new one is not waiting. The new one is here. Woo. The new one is here. The new one is here. The new one is here, y'all. It is right here, if you want it to be. Yeah. It got too hot. Oh no. No, it's okay. I don't know. If you're still with me, repeat after me. When I say love, y'all say love. Love. When I say truth, y'all say truth. Truth. When I say power, y'all say power. Power. And when I say justice, y'all say justice. Justice. I really love, this might be a little bit of spoiler, but not too much. If you have a copy of Bianca's book, or if you are in need of buying one after the book event, they will be back there. She folds in her gorgeous illustrations and visual art throughout the pages, and I'm really moved that she ends her book with Auntie Hanani K. Trask on the final page before the acknowledgements. If anyone knows anything about Auntie Hanani K. Trask, she's a Kanaka scholar, activist, organizer, revolutionary of our people from Hawaii, across Oceania and beyond. And I just want to remind folks that when she spoke in 1993 in front of the Iolani Palace, and she declared, "We are not American, we are not American, we are not American, we will die as Hawaiians, we will never be American." I feel like today we're like, yeah, fuck yeah, Auntie Hanani's right. And people are so moved, as I think we all should be, by that declaration. But I want to remind folks, not everyone and not every Hawaiian agreed with her, or some were even ashamed, and some were combative of why she was so loud at a time like that in 1993. Which hopefully maybe that reminds you of some other folks who are also vocal about the things that matter in our communities, even today, or even throughout our history. And I think it's a timely reminder that sometimes things are said to our people far before they're ready to hear it. Auntie Hanani has passed since then, and I am wagering that Bianca has said so much in this necessary text that it's going to get a lot of pushback, and we really need to protect her. Yes. Amidst the unfolding and the celebration of the book. But it's prolific in the way that she is saying a lot of things that our people are, not all our people are ready to hear quite yet. They might not be ready for generations to come, but it was why that's what makes this book so necessary and so important. So I'm sending that love and that warmth and that protection to you, sis. I'm super excited to hear you in conversation with our other sis, Michelle. And I offer you all this last poem. I'm still alive because I'm not afraid of what I already know wants to kill me. Because I'm a first generation queer Samoan woman, 4 chapters of a survivor story excavated from my bones, the reason your oppression doesn't know what to shoot first. I'm still alive because they C-sectioned me out of my mother's middle in spite of knowing my gender. They think that blood is the only thing a person loses the moment they give birth to a girl. My gender never belonged to itself. When it's raped, America does this funny thing where it tells me I was asking for it at the same time that it tells me to stay silent. The hemline of my skirt is an overactive jury that treats my body like a courtroom, that treats my voice box like a closet, that they say I deserve to die in, on the floorboards of my sins, because I fell in love with a woman, made an altar of her body since no one else ever has. I'm still alive because everyone deserves to be treated like a holy offering. A sacred thing it is, y'all, to find and know God in the last place homophobia would ever think to look, a back door into heaven after being put through hell for having the faith of a faggot, a dyke for a daughter, the names your community calls you in a language that isn't the one that they immigrated here with. I'm still alive because most days, y'all, I let the trauma write all of my poems, because saying them out loud on a stage is the first step towards getting help. Because I trust the microphone on a mic stand in a room full of strangers before I'll ever trust the police. This stage is both sanctuary and emergency room. My people are both griots and doctors, and patients with no patience left in them, just stories with skin, too dark for sympathy, because no one ever considers our pain an American tragedy. I'm still alive because I watch Oakland every fucking day pick itself up from its own concrete, scrub the blood out its cracks before the new neighbors arrive, on blocks that their mortgage used to own, next to a white hipster's wet dream, next to a BART station that Oscar's daughter will never have the stomach to take. I'm still alive because no one seems to see that there is no difference between Iraq and East Oakland, Southside Chicago and South Central, a battalion of young soldiers and the students in my poetry workshop, how no one has mornings like them. How they wake up in their own piss and grief to go to another friend's funeral more times than they even go to class. How the biggest fear for most of my friends is to raise a Black child. in a justice system of a joke that will continue to say taser when we kept saying gun, that will continue to cry acquittal when we kept crying murder, that will continue to sing God bless America when we kept saying God please. Have mercy on all of us. I'm still alive, y'all, because in the past decade or so, we have lost Amiri Baraka, Maya Angelou, Gabriel Garcia Marquez, Yuri Kochiyama, Grace Lee Boggs, Afeni Shakur, Prince, Aretha Franklin, Ntozake Shange, Whitney Houston, Nipsey Hussle, Terisa Siagatonu, Haunani K. Trask, Toni Morrison, Nikki Giovanni. And upon learning of all of their passings, I hung my poetry at half mast. We, artists of the revolution, know that we are on borrowed time, using borrowed words, watching our leaders turn ancestor in our life. I'm still alive, y'all, because whatever wants me dead does not know that you cannot kill somebody who isn't afraid anymore. Somebody who is ready to leave this place an ancestor. Somebody who is ready to give birth to the generation that will bring about the liberation I was always destined to make, but never meant to see. All right, y'all. I'm gonna need y'all to give all of your energy and all your love to our main event tonight. Please start clapping with me. Please start giving love. And please welcome to the stage, Michelle King and Bianca Mabute-Louie.
Hello. Hi. Can we give another round of applause for Terisa and what an epic performance that was? You don't feel it? Because I felt it. I got goosebumps several times. I wanted to say, F it up, poet, so many times. But I said it in my head over and over again. I spotted a little person, so I didn't want to offend her. But that was incredible. And thank you so much for having me here to moderate our conversation today, Bianca. Hi, y'all. My name is Michelle Mijung Kim. I use she, her pronouns. I am fortunate and honored and lucky enough to be here to moderate a conversation with Bianca. And I did my homework and I read the book. Look at, this is truly an author's love letter to another author. If you see dog-eared books with annotations, that is the greatest gift that an author can have. And as an author myself, okay? Grace Lee Boggs asked us the question, what time is it in the clock of the world? And to me, there's no better time and no more urgency for this book than today. And Terisa talked about being fearless and not having to be afraid of becoming an ancestor. To be truthful, I have a lot of fear. And I have a lot of fear today, given the times that we're living in. Maybe not fear of becoming an ancestor, but fear of what is going to happen to my loved ones. I have a lot of questions about what my role is in this movement right now, what my responsibility is. And then I also think about so many people that I look up to in our community who have come before us, but who are also fighting alongside us today. And I remember this quote by Mia Mingus, who talks about how we can only truly practice courage when we're afraid. And I really feel that this work that Bianca has put forth for all of us is an act of courage. It is an act of love. And I trust that the community here and beyond will embrace this work and really carry forward the spirit that Bianca has put in this book. I'm so grateful for the work that you have put out here for us. And yeah, I feel the sense of responsibility and urgency to carry this out. So thank you all for being here, and let's dive into this conversation. I want to start by talking about your popo, your grandma. For those of you who haven't read, there's a fantastic anecdote that she shares. I can't get the image of your grandma in a department store, Saks Fifth Avenue, of all else, talking to the clerks about getting a discount. Talk to me about that anecdote and how you came up with this idea of unassimilable and what that means to you.
Well, first of all, I know we've done a lot of introing, but I just have to do more. and like giving of gratitude. Thank you, Terisa. Thank you to the folks and the labor, seen and unseen, to hold this space, to make this space possible. And thank you for your very deep, close reading of the book and facilitating with us today. I opened the book with the story of my maternal grandma, my popo, and the unassimilable tornado that she was when she was alive, because she came to the United States to SUV, Ethnoburb. Any folks familiar with that area or from that area? Hey. She didn't speak the language. She didn't know how to drive, which is very difficult when you're in Southern California. She didn't have any peers. She actually just got left by her husband through a very controversial, heartbreaking public affair. And she, you know, by all metrics, was kind of destitute, right? Like that was her status, was being married and attached to a man in our family culture and in the community she was in. And she came and she was a whirlwind and she refused to assimilate. She never spoke English. She drove very scary in the 99 Ranch parking lot, right? She, my mom would like try to take her to different parts of LA County, and one time, actually it was probably more than one time, multiple times we went to Saks, and she tried to bargain and like be like, it's just speaking in Cantonese, right? She's like, I want this, but I don't want to pay that price. And they're like, huh? There's this one part where I write about where it's like, it doesn't matter if you speak Cantonese or not, but she's going to talk at you in her language about her cheating ex-husband that you don't know and have never met before. And I love that because that she's kind of my muse for this politic of refusal to cooperate and assimilate. And when she was alive, it was, I'm not going to like pretend that it was easy, because I think a person who refuses to assimilate and cooperate is actually someone who we would call a difficult person. And so it was really, I came up with the idea for the book in 2021 on the heels of the Atlanta spa shooting, because I think that same month or a month afterwards, my popo passed away. And so I was noticing all this public discourse on anti-Asian hate and, oh yeah, that's good. It's like there any movement. Thank you. Yes, way better. Okay, I can move now. I was like staying really still. Okay, your tip. Okay. But we were on the heels of the Atlanta spa shooting, and I was noticing a lot of public discourse on anti-Asian hate that was around, like, we don't deserve to be hate crimes because we belong here, and we're good immigrants, and we're American too. And I was like, ew, I don't want to be American. Why are we trying to labor and prove ourselves to this country when this is a moment to indict the country because they're exposing themselves to be a fallacy built on anti-Blackness and enslavement and Orientalism, exclusion, all these things, right? Our citizenship and our belonging is very clearly conditional in this moment. Why are we trying to, continue to labor to prove ourselves? And so that, and again, reflecting on my plus life and really trying to reclaim her legacy of being a difficult woman and an unassimilable elder Asian person during this time. It all kind of came together. And again, she was my muse to think through what an Asian diasporic politic of refusal looks like. And, you know, reclaiming the term unassimilable, which historically in immigration policy has been used, you know, certain races or groups are deemed unassimilable and therefore not eligible for citizenship. But it's like, I want to be unassimilable and I don't want to be, you know, American. We will never be American, right? In the words of Honani K. Trask. So yeah, that was kind of the origin story.
Thank you for sharing that. Yeah.
I love where you got to towards the end of the book and how sure you are about the mandate to become unassimilable, to indict this this imperialistic, this capitalist, this patriarchal, this all the oppressive foundation of this country, and how we are forced to assimilate and contort ourselves to be valued within that framework. But I think that's a journey that we go on. I don't think, one of the things that I really appreciated about your book is how vulnerable you were in documenting your journey and how you didn't just start wanting to be unassimilable, right? That you went through the journey of assimilating. And also you talk about this concept called immigrant shadow, which I hadn't heard before. This concept of, you wanting to shed that shadow of being seen as a perpetual foreigner. And I related to that deeply because I'm an immigrant to this country. I moved here when I was a teenager, and I thought that in order for me to succeed, to make it here, and to be able to protect my parents, who were low income and who didn't have a lot of power, I needed to be successful. And the only way that I do that is by shedding whatever remnants that I have that show to the world that I don't belong here. And so I went through my own journey of understanding my worthiness as I am, but I think there was quite a journey for me to be able to understand it and that arc to get there. So I'd love for you to kind of take us through your journey and what you mean by this immigrant shadow that you also experienced and why it's important for us to interrogate that.
Yeah, thank you for sharing a bit of your experience. I think for me, it really was, assimilation is survival and it's compulsory, right? It's not something we necessarily think about because it's for the sake of protecting ourselves and our families. And I'm not, whatever our folks and we ourselves have had to do to survive, we honor that and we hug that tender part of ourselves, right? And so I'm not like shaming, that part of me, or us or folks who feel like they have to do that, because we know what we need to do to survive. And at the same time, I think it was once I went to college and I learned the term first generation, really. Once I was around people who were more like me, once I realized I could kind of breathe and have an exhale from whiteness, was when I started to interrogate it, because I don't think we can really interrogate these things until we feel like a certain level of safety, right? And so I write about in the book, I grew up in the ethnoburb, but I commuted to a very white part of Southern California to go to a very predominantly white school. It was very elitist, and it was assimilation and survival. And then I went to college and I came across at Mills College. I saw some Mills folks here earlier. But Mills no longer exists. That's very sad to me, but that's something else for another day. But Mills is very special because it's an all women's college and it is a private university, but I think compared to a lot of other private universities, there's a pretty large proportion of women of color and a large proportion of first generation college students. And there's a lot of supportive student services for us. And so when I gained that language, I was like, oh, I'm not an idiot because I didn't know how to fill out FAFSA. Like all of these kind of class dimensions became real to me, and were mirrored back to me. And that's when I began to interrogate, like, oh, why did I feel so much shame and want to hide so much of my home and my family and my identity when I grew up? And it wasn't until I came to this place of safety and being able to name even certain things in my experience. And that was kind of the seed of right. But since then, it has been an ongoing journey of feeling social, especially now in academia, in the institution I'm at now, I constantly feel like I'm being socialized and sometimes punished if I don't assimilate. And so it's constantly back and forth of like, how do I preserve? It's not just about, it's about being unassimilable. It's about saying fuck you to these institutions, but it's also about making sure I come out of this with my soul still intact, right? Because they really demand, assimilation, in various different contexts, but in my particular context, is costing me so much, it feels like. So, yeah.
Thank you.
I kind of want to follow up on what you just said about being inside academia and maybe perhaps PWI at large, predominantly white institution at large. As someone who also been through those institutions, whether it's corporate America, I started my career in consulting and then I was in tech for a long time until I was really harmed to a point where I couldn't exist in that space anymore. I think there's always this question of how do we maintain our integrity and our ties to the truth and the principles of the movement without losing and compromising that too much. But we also can't get kicked out because then we can't do the work inside the system, whether we believe that that is even a possibility or not. So I'd love to hear, as somebody who's still in academia, who has risen through the ranks to be able to get to that level of safety, how do you preserve your integrity? And what do you find yourself having to negotiate? And where's the line?
Yeah, that's such a good question. I think so many of us have been feeling in a really live way, right? In the last 15 months in particular, because of the genocide, just to name it plainly. I feel like I'm in the middle of it still. I'm a graduate student, so I'm pretty precarious. I'm not even like, I mean, the most protected people in academia are tenured professors, right? And I'm not even like near there. They don't even look at me sometimes, you know, like the power hierarchy is so intense. And how do I mean, I will say one mindset shift that has helped me. So when I entered academia and even when I was, you know, in undergrad and college, I felt really just like lucky to be here. Right? Like I'm like first in my family and no one has ever aspired to kind of this level of education. There's no Asian tenured professor in my department. There's very few Asian American sociologists. I felt just, I'm so lucky to be here and I'm going to try to do what I can to represent my community. But my mindset has really shifted in the past few years. I don't feel lucky to be here. They are lucky to have me.
Mm.
Actually, like, I'm a worker. I'm a fucking worker. I mean, but for real, right? And I think it's important to like, that was really important for me to come. I mean, obviously there's levels of exploitation, but like understanding that in the end, I don't control the knowledge I want to produce. I don't control the means of production. I'm in an MLM. And by MLM, I mean like I'm my currency to keep my position that doesn't pay me a livable wage. To keep that position, I have to pay money for journals to consider my work for publication. And if I'm lucky enough for my work to get published, then it's published through a journal, through a paywall that nobody can access. And so I'm like, wow, I really got scammed. I went from the scam of evangelicalism to the scam of and so I think like realizing like the capitalist and the labor dynamics that I'm part of and realizing my position, I will not be safe necessarily if I play this game. First of all, it will run me to the ground. They succeed as long as I feel like I'm not enough, right? Because they need me feeling that way to keep producing free labor for them. And I'm actually more protected when I am in coalition with other students of color, with other workers on campus, with other contingent folks who are in these systems who don't have job security or have levels of precarity, right? And I'm not saying like, I understand I am in a very privileged position and I have access that I never would have imagined. And at the same time, we have to be very clear about who the power holders are. And even when we have access, it doesn't mean that we actually have power, right? But we have power when we organize together. And so that was really like helpful for me then to think about things like integrity and how do I stay in these systems and not get kicked out. I just am a lot more protective of myself now and my labor. And I'm just trying to push things as much as I can without getting kicked out, basically. Like I wrote the syllabus I wanted to write. I did a talk for this book at my institution last week. It was hard because I realized I am really dysregulated here. But we did it in collaboration with SJP and Third World Coalition for Students. And, I was very intentional about the partnerships because those are the folks that I choose to align with, not, you might have heard. On the record here, I will say that I'm being like a politician. This is where like the interpersonal is also really important. I think I can't just say like, fuck you all, because I have to understand people are on their journeys. And so it's really frustrating when I see like there are folks who have really very little to lose, in my opinion, doing absolutely nothing. And when I see folks who have the most to lose doing the absolute most and risking the most, right? And so it makes me then, that's what gives me courage, I think, to be inspired by, again, folks who have the most to lose doing the most. And also, again, trying to be in relationship with the folks who are like more reluctant. And again, in the process, I have had to accept that they aren't going to take the steps that I wish they would take, but they're also in positions where they're willing to protect me as much as they can. And it's all very weird and honestly sometimes gross. And I accept that it feels gross because these are settler institutions and they are gross. So I think it's important for me to continue to confront like how weird I feel and contradictory I feel in these spaces. Yeah.
No. Yeah. Weird and gross. Yeah. I can relate. It's something that you just said about also being in community with people who are on their own journey. You share several stories of people who you're in relationship with who are on varying journeys and are on different political spectrums. One of your friends that you talk about is Linda. I'm sure it's a changed name. I don't know. Linda, who is socially progressive, but started leaning a little bit more conservative after she had her child. And I quote, she wants her girls to have the best opportunities and futures possible. And she believes affirmative action takes possibilities away from them because they are Asian and affluent.
Linda.
I hear y'all. I hear you. But Linda's not alone. She's not the minority here. This sentiment is widespread among people that I'm in community with. People who really mean well, who believe that it is important to stand up for civil rights, the Black Lives Matter, who will vote for Democrats, blah, blah, blah. But when it comes to thinking about their own loved ones' futures, it feels hard. It feels like they're being asked to give up something that they worked really hard to earn. And it feels like a zero-sum game. As a recent mother yourself, I wonder how you're unpacking this and how you would advise all of us to think about this weird and gross predicament that we find ourselves in.
It's like gross is like the word of the day. Change the word as we go. Yeah, I mean, it's interesting becoming a parent because you make parent friends who you have nothing in common with. The fact that like both have kids. And so it's really interesting because it's made me think a lot about how we conceptualize the family and how we conceptualize safety. And it honestly has made me feel very discouraged that a lot of folks really do see safety and family in terms of their own kind of nuclear unit. And they don't see that, we have a duty to fight for and defend children in Gaza as much as we have a duty to defend our own kids, because their lack of safety is not making the world safer for our children, right? And so it's been really hard to think about, and often I will just be like, okay, they're not coming on my compound. Right? Because I'm like, I want to be building with folks who think beyond the hyper individualism that we're socialized into. But I can't just write everyone off because I'll have no friends. And they'll Make friends as an adult. Yeah, I'm supposed to socialize my find some friends with some down as parents.
I know.
Yeah, so it's all really hard, but I'm not like, I think to be very frank, like I'm not really in a zone in my life where I feel like I have the energy to always be pushing every little thing. And again, I'm in a very different context right now. I'm like a suburb of Houston. And in Texas, like no one wants to talk about their political views. In fact, they hate it. There's no like, you know, in the Bay Area, there's, for better or worse, there's like some social clout sometimes to like having social justice language, blah, blah, blah. I'm in a context where they really don't care. And again, in fact, they're like, please don't talk about it. And so that has also then meant that I have to rely on then how I live and how I do family, because the state context I'm in is so like not into the language and talking of it all. And so one way that I've been trying to do that, we had a watermelon themed birthday party for my kid's first birthday, because I have a lot of pro-Israel family members who are evangelical, and they also provide free childcare for us.
Okay.
Like, man, this is so hard. The interpersonal stuff. It's like, and so for those, and those family members were also hosting our kid's birthday party. Come in waving the Palestinian flag. We were trying to be subversive in our own way. So what we did was we themed it watermelon, and then we made, instead of receiving gifts, we asked guests to make donations to different families and mutual aid resources to families in Gaza, as well as in the Congo and Sudan. And we sent a little thank you note afterwards explaining why we themed it watermelon, and also in Thanksgiving and gratitude to them showing up for our family, we made donations in their name to, again, different mutual aid sources. And so that already is like more shocking than I think most people in Texas are comfortable with. I sent it, I didn't say it to their face. They could stuff like that, and just trying to really live as much as I can in integrity with what I believe in. That friend, I did send her an update of the watermelon explanation and everything too. And she was like, "Oh, cool." So I'm like, yeah, that's kind of where I'm at right now. I'm sure I could be doing more. We all could be, but yeah.
Yeah.
I love how childcare becomes a site of politicization. I'm all about that. That's great. And also, you talk about, with regards to Linda, how your comeback to her was about all the affirmative action that is actually happening, all the non-meritocratic decision-making that's already happening, right? Towards legacy students, towards, affluent white students. So I think also taking a moment to change the narratives that people have, I think is a good strategy that you write about. So I think you're doing enough. And we are enough in a society that always tells us that we're not. And of course, there's always more that we can be doing at any given time. And I think we only can do that when we are moving as a collective. Also, I need to share this quote from your chapter 2, because I think this is how you talk about us being unassimilable. This is a spirit that I think kind of, this quote that I have embodies that spirit of unassimilability. You say, "I aspire for us as Asian Americans, especially for those of us in PWIs of any kind in any industry, to threaten the whiteness of these spaces visibly, disruptively, and dangerously." What does that look like in today's landscape? And what are the risks that we should be prepared for?
That's wild, because when I wrote that, it was probably like 2022. And I want to say each year the world looks different, but like, let's be real, each half an hour the world looks different. It moves so fast. I think I actually want to share a story related to that we'll get into how I'm navigating that. But in terms of the risks, we are seeing the collapse of empire, and that is necessary, and it's showing up in the eroding of our institutions. And so all of the executive orders, right? I'm not trying to be alarmist, but what we're seeing is massive, state repressive takeover of all of these institutions and the pulling back of safety nets, all of these spaces that are supposed to supposedly, right, serve us. And one way that I saw that, or I'm seeing that even in a conversation I had this week, was I was emailing with a professor, actually, she's here in California in a very liberal area, blue state, right? And then she went offline for like 2 weeks in our comms. And I'm like, okay, it's not a big deal. And then she comes back and she's like, sorry, I had to deal with an emergency. Our institution is laying off 64 faculty members and shutting down 6 departments, including mine. And she's part of women and gender studies, right? And so when I think about the risks, this is not the beginning and this is not the end. We have already been seeing the defunding of ethnic studies and women and gender studies and humanities. These departments that are literal lifelines for students and have been lifelines for me have always been under attack. And this won't be the end, right? Like, this isn't just about the next 4 years, because this is beyond party at this point. Right. And so I'm thinking then, like, okay, what does it mean then to be an educator at a time like this? And she is organizing with her students and faculty members to defend these departments. And I think absolutely we must stand 10 toes down behind the folks who are trying to protect these spaces. And at the same time, we have to think about what learning is going to look like outside of the traditional schooling system. When my kid is college age, I'm like, colleges aren't going to exist. I have a freedom dream that education will be for everybody, and that we'll be in our learning communes, and we won't be doing SAT or whatever, like there will be application, right? I hope, but before we get there, it's going to get really, really ugly. And for us to get to that freedom dream, we have to protect these spaces right now that are sites of possibilities within these violent institutions. And we have to be building and imagining outside of these institutions. So the work needs to be happening on all fronts, inside, outside, everywhere, right? And so when I think about risk, I'm thinking about the collapse of everything and what we're going to build in the midst of collapse. Yeah.
I'm going to switch gears a little bit and talk about your experience in the church. In your book, you discuss the ethnic church as both a safe haven, but also as an extension of whiteness and colonialism. I'd love for you to expand on the role that Christian evangelicalism has played on the Asian diaspora's political identity, but also more personally, how you became unassimilable even in that space and what that cost you and what you also gained from it.
Yeah. Let's talk about it. Into an Asian immigrant church. That's what your mama bond together. Yeah, but not kidding. Yeah, I talk about that a lot in the book. I really knew I had a lot of conflicting feelings about it. I knew I wanted to work out on the page. And it is a safe haven. It's where a lot of it's often the first kind of site of community. They might not see Asian people be leaders or have any kind of authority in other parts of their lives, but in the church, we do lead, right? We do see each other. We speak our own language. We're able to like preserve and pass down culture. We are able to just be. And at the same time, these evangelical ethnic churches have very violent politics of exclusion that are homophobic, that are often even anti-immigrant, that are very carceral in the ways that they think about like atonement and forgiveness, right? Like these theologies, and a lot of other smarter scholars have done work on this, and theologians have done work on this, on how those theologies really uphold the carceral system that we have too. And my own relationship with it, I mean, it was a huge part of my life. There are people here who I know from those spaces, and in particular, the campus ministry, InterVarsity, let's name them, right? They're huge on this campus, I know. And I was so attracted to that space because there were a lot of Asian Americans there, and it felt like my home church in LA, that was a Chinese immigrant church where I found a sense of home there. It was a sense of reprieve from my white private school. And I was at Mills during the Occupy movement, during the murder of Oscar Grant. And Mills is a very social justice oriented school. They were having very confronting conversations about race. And I felt really confused as an Asian American, and my campus ministry was where I would go to escape. And it was where I would go to honestly disassociate from these complicated conversations about race, because in these evangelical circles, they're like, don't think about those things. It's all about interpersonal reconciliation. If we are right with each other and we have friends and neighbors of different races, that's going to solve racism, right? And you're like, but what about the police? And keep wanting the police. They're like, shut up. Don't, it's just about Jesus, and their relationship with Jesus and their relationship with each other. Their way of conceptualizing racial injustice and injustice in general is very just about the individual and interpersonal, but we know that racism is structural as well. And so it was a way for me to disassociate, and I really found my home there, and I could kind of engage with these issues at my own pace, on my own way. But eventually it became really suffocating to be in those spaces, because I had always known that I was not straight, but I wasn't really ready to claim that I was bisexual or queer. I didn't really know what and how I wanted to identify. But they drew a line in the sand, and they made a policy saying that everyone had to teach a very kind of traditional homophobic framework of gender and sexuality. And I mean, Mills is a very queer school too. Our Bible study was we had queer and non-binary students leading and doing all types of things. And it was whatever, this is why this is cool. And so I had to decide for myself then, am I going to continue to be in this space, or am I going to try to fight this space, or am I just going to leave? And because I loved this space so much, I tried to fight for what I believed in this space. I organized with other queer students and alumni, and we had meetings with the president, we had meetings with the board, but it became very clear that it's all about money, that they had a donor who wanted this instituted across the institution, and they were not going to budge. And so that experience in 2015 really forms my relationship now with institutions too, that, you can try to fight, but at a certain time and at a certain point, you have to protect and preserve yourself. And kind of how you were describing your experience in corporate America and tech, I could physically no longer be there. I was so unwell. And I was also so heartbroken that so many people who had claimed to be my family had betrayed me and had just either watched me be harassed by supervisors or turned their backs on me. And the real fucker of it all is during this time of touring, they've come out of the woodworks to send me long, weird apologies, or to, I don't know, ask for connections to my literary agent.
Hell no.
That's a mess.
It's really weird and messy.
Yeah.
But I do feel like I have closure from that time. I feel like I got a lot of it out on the page, but it was a very painful time, a very heartbreaking time, and it changes how I relate to institutions. It changes how I relate to religion and these spaces. They're not for me. But I am still down with socialist Palestinian Jesus. But yeah, so choosing to then be unassimilable, choosing to self-actualize as a queer person, which was also hard because I was and have been straight passing, and choosing to be a louder version of myself meant I lost my community. But it also meant that I got to rebuild a new community where I was authentically myself from day one. And one of those communities is my former co-teachers here now. You know, part of that community where I rebuilt was ethnic studies.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, I mean, you talked about it so eloquently now, but I know that there was so much heartache behind those stories that you so generously shared with us today and in the books. I just want to thank you for the vulnerability in the book. And I can feel just how difficult and challenging it is to have your entire community and your sense of belonging be threatened, and you having to reconcile that internally and then to express that externally is no easy feat. So thank you. Yeah. Also, how are we doing on time? Because I have so many questions.
6:46.
Okay, so maybe like 2 more questions. Are we good? Okay, awesome. I want to kind of pull the thread on divorcing yourself from a community and then finding a new one. Something that I've been grappling with a lot, that I'm losing a lot of sleep over actually, is all different ruptures that are happening inside our community. Even with folks who I know are in alignment with my fundamental values. I have felt so much disappointment and betrayal within my own circle of friends over the last 13 months. And the frustration that I feel, the disappointment I feel for the varying degrees of willingness to take risks in this political climate. And I want to lean into the belief that everybody is able to transform, right? Rooting our stance in transformative justice and not disposability politics. But I sometimes wonder where the line is, because you talk about preserving our own needs for safety and drawing healthy boundaries, but also the need for us to pull each other close when we mess up, when we are on different stages of our journey politically. What does that look like, and how are you distinguishing those lines, and how are you able to practice both creativity and compassion at the same time in a moment where so many of us are grappling with so much? And I think a lot of people's ability to connect across different ideologies, different degrees of risk-taking feels really precarious.
Yeah, I echo what you're saying of just the feeling of disappointment and also isolation at times, right? Again, just feeling like, you know, I'm not in their situation, but sometimes I'm a judgmental bitch and I'm like, what I can see, you could probably be, but like, I don't know. I think a lot of times when I'm critical of others, it's because I'm also critical of myself in the same way, because I feel like I should be doing more. I'm, you know, like I'm not enough for what I want. And yeah, that's a really harsh and hard kind of place to be in with ourselves and each other. I think in the last few months, I think in the past, I would have this idea in my head of where I wanted people in my life to be politically and the things I wanted them to do, right? But I think more recently, I've really been thinking about, again, the collapse of all our institutions and what it's going to take to survive. And I have more empathy, I think, than I have in the past around like Trump supporters. I know, because I'm like, the system has failed us in so thoroughly, right? And you're looking for an explanation, or you're looking in your state of survival, which I'm also in, a way to preserve or hang on to any kind of sense of safety or stability that you have. And I think about my relationship now with the ethnic church, who, again, like I'm not part of this, I just said that's not for me, but relationships are messy, and I married into a family that is very much in that space. And so now they're still in my life. And yeah, like you talk about, their theologies are very violent, the way they vote is very violent, and at the same time, they remain the most socialist space I've ever seen. They're paying each other's like medical bills. They're really taking, this is an immigrant community, really taking care of each other and protecting each other in this stage of fascism in a very tangible, material way. To the point where it makes me think of the communities I'm part of that do have the same politics. And I think about the ways that we care for each other there. And I'm like, man, this group didn't even offer me a ride home. You know? And I guess I'll just take the, you know, like, that's the reality. I think like, I'm thinking more than about whether people have the right language or politics and more about how we're caring for each other. And again, it's not to dismiss the very violent politics that we need to continue to confront and challenge and have conversations about. But I think when shit hits the fan, which it already has been, care is the most important thing if we're going to make it and survive, not if someone responded in the right way to this particular crisis. And it's so hard for me to say that because I feel like in these moments of response, that's when you build your character to care. That's where you build your capacity to care. And so I'm really, I don't know, I'm like, this is very live for me. I'm wrestling with all of it and I'm thinking and really trying to look at people's actions and, like you said, hold capacity for softness and the ability for people to change, because I have to also hold that for myself. And this is a sidebar, but this is really why I was very intentional and deliberate to choose you and Terisa to do this event with me, because I think you are people who do not shy away from the pain and the darkness that we're facing, but you're able to hold humanity with so much softness and possibility. And that's, I'm like, we need to hold on to that. And I want to be around more.
Thank you. Okay, with the second to last question, I have a closing question that I'm going to get to, but I don't think we can talk about the Asian American experience without talking about anti-Blackness and how we build cross-racial solidarity without over-identifying with the Black struggle, but ensuring that we are creating our own understanding and clarity around what our struggles look like on its own. And understanding the connection between the ways in which we have been oppressed throughout history and the ways in which other marginalized communities have been oppressed in this country. I mean, even something as, you know, ubiquitous as model minority myth that we talk about all the time these days is rooted in anti-Blackness. We cannot talk about model minority myth unless we talk about the origin of that being rooted in anti-Blackness. How do you see the Asian diaspora, Asian Americans, moving towards this more principled version of solidarity? And you talk about your friend, Amy, who is well-intentioned, who is hurting from experiencing anti-Asian racism, but who is very clumsily identifying herself as an equal co-struggler to the Black struggle and wedging herself inside of that frame, which feels limiting, but also, you know, looking at my past of politicization and my journey around finding the language to be able to talk about my oppression, I have learned so much, and most of my educators were Black scholars, activists, and poets and artists who afforded me the language and framework to be able to think about my own oppression in that frame. So I was really, you know, glad that you went deep into that subject in this book, and I'd love for you to give a little snippet, preview to our audience here.
Yeah. I share about this friend, Amy, who at the height of Ferguson, we had a town hall on our campus, and Black women were sharing their experiences of anti-Blackness at Mills. And she's Asian American, who's Chinese American, and she takes the mic and she's like, "This is so upsetting to me. And I relate to this so much because Asian Americans are really like othered and discriminated against here too." And she was like yelling into the mic. And I'm like,
Like, you're embarrassing me.
we did. And I was, it's true.
And that was so, like, I could feel your Hand sweats.
Oh, yeah. I'm sweating now thinking about it. Right, like that happens a lot. I think the overconflation of our experiences and Alicia Garza and many other scholars have said, and activists and movement folks have said, the specificity of anti-Blackness in this country, like other folks trying to conflate those experiences, is its own form of erasure anti-Blackness.
Yeah.
And so in that moment, it was like, I felt responsible and embarrassed. Like collective culture, I'm like, someone's got to get this girl. What are we doing here? We need to do some damage control, right? And yeah, it was a journey with her. She's a friend, but she was also kind of a student. And so I was I was in university at the time, so I was a campus minister. So I was kind of in like a mentorship position. And so there was a lot of conversations and, in debriefing with her, realizing she has a lot of pain, racialized pain and trauma that even I myself was not aware of. And, understanding that obviously Asian is very diverse. Even both of us were Chinese American, but her experiences were very different than mine just because of the fact that she spoke with an accent, right? Like there were ways that she was othered, that she was bringing that pain to the table. Mm-hmm. And it made me think like, damn, like we really need our own spaces, not this space. We really needed our own spaces long before this moment so that we could, really understand our own trauma and pain, but really still show up in solidarity and accomplish it with Black women at Mills at that particular moment in time. And I was thinking about that again in the height of the Stop Asian Hate movement, because it felt like that was one of the first times where folks did have space. And I use this term, racial placelessness, of how we might over-identify, but a lot of times we actually take ourselves out of the understanding of racial dynamics in this country altogether. And I saw that even in my research. I would talk to people about Stop Asian Hate and Black Lives Matter, and elders would talk to me about they would like criticize Trump, and I was doing interviews in ethnic churches, and they would talk about the racism of white evangelicals. And they would say they're so cruel to like Black and Latino people, and I would think like they're cruel to you too. They're cruel to us too. So there's this racial placelessness where on the one hand we're conflating and over-identifying with Black struggle, but on the other hand we're removing ourselves from racial oppression altogether. And I'm like, man, where are we then? And then there's I give these like typologies in that chapter. I think it's chapter 4. And then there's the folks who are like, justice for Peter Liang. Oh God. Oh God. This book. I move towards this to the end of actually interrogating the word diaspora and asking the question of, instead of, Asian American, which is very much the politics of inclusion and representation, thinking about Asian diaspora. Why are we in diaspora? We're in diaspora, we're not in our homelands because of coloniality and ongoing dynamics of racial capitalism and imperialism and white supremacy. And I hope that that particular lens and critique would lend us to a more expansive solidarity that does not erase or take ourselves out of the equation of race in this country, because we are very central to the racial project of America.
Yeah.
But that actually, this concept of Asian diaspora, that it would allow us to center both our pain, but also our very precarious position and at times complicit position as settlers here. And actually as very central, like I said earlier, very central and not actually placeless at all, but very integral to the project of empire. And so we have to understand that position if we're going to disrupt and fuck it up, right?
Fuck it up.
Okay, this is the last question, y'all. One of my favorite parts of the book is toward the end, when you write a small letter to your child. And you talk about your baby's name. I'd love for you to share what that name means to you. And say it out loud for the folks who hear. Let's honor the beautiful name that you have given your child, and how that relates to the vision that you have for our collective future.
Yeah. He has a lot of, I mean, he's half Filipino. He's got a lot of names. I was gonna say, so this is just like half of his name. I'm not sure his whole name. But his Filipino name is Kapwa, which means people of shared identity. It's very similar to Imbakesh or Ubuntu, right? Like the idea that you are my other me. And I didn't tell any of this to my parents. So my mom was giving him his Chinese name, and his Chinese name is Ga Yin in Cantonese, which means to take an expansive view of family. And so it was like kind of funny that the names kind of complemented each other and really pointed to this sense of expansion and interconnectedness. And then I learned from family members in Hong Kong that his name also has multiple meanings. This is very Chinese. Things can mean, but it also means to embody like an indomitable spirit. Sounds unassimilable to me.
Yeah.
So that's his name that I explained in the last chapter of the book, and that's my hope for humanity, and that's my hope for him, right? That he, his peers are the surviving toddlers in Gaza, right? And that he would understand like that's his family. And because again, like I feel so discouraged by like the ways that we understand family here in the West. And so with his namesake, I hope that he really and his generation really take on the spirit of Kapwa, that, you know, our fate is interconnected and we are interconnected as family. And yeah, that's the hope.
You begin your book with your grandma's story. You end the book with a letter to your child. And I have no doubt that your work, this book and beyond, is an integral part of our intergenerational healing and dreaming that continues to happen in every corner of the world. Thank you for being with us. Thank you for this gift. And make sure you buy a copy of Unassimilable.